Have you ever read a steampunk fantasy with airship, privateers, massive battles, and honestly great storytelling? Well, stick around, let me tell you about one. What's up, you page turners? My name's Caleb Sanders, and welcome to the Sanders Review. Today, I really want to talk about one of, honestly, it is up in the conversation for one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, and that is a book called The Aeronaut, Windlass by Jim Butcher. This is the first book in his Cinder Spire series, and if you know Jim Butcher, you know that he is the author of the best-selling Dresden Files series, along with the Codex Alera, another series I'd like to talk about at some point. And I heard about this book and really didn't know much about it, and I checked out a little bit snip of it, and I fell in love with this story to the point where, unfortunately, I don't own a physical copy. Every single time I go to the bookstore, I just can't find them. And it's something where I'm going to keep an eye out. I kind of want to buy it from a bookstore. Buying from Amazon, I do when I need to, but this is one where I want to find a really good hardcover, and maybe someday I would love to get Jim Butcher's autograph. Now, The Aeronaut's Windlass is a steampunk fantasy. Now, steampunk fantasy takes place in a variety of time periods, and this one takes place in something that is a little more synonymous with the, I would say, the late 1700s, early 1800s kind of Napoleonic era. If you think about sky ships, if you took the galleons and the frigates of the sea and put those in the sky, that is kind of what you're getting to. I just realized my hat's not center. Oh well, you know what? You gotta put up with it and deal with it. There you go. But anyways, this steampunk fantasy, you see a variety of steampunk fantasy technology. It's crystal-based power cores that are grown in vats that also power different weapons and things. You do have magic systems with Etherealists, and it's a magic war. There's heritage of magic war. There's underlying tropes, but also stigmas against people. And there's a very interesting magic system and the ways in which people cope with the magic. That's all I'll say. And this is mostly spoiler free, just so you know. So it's something that I hope that you would be able to get into and enjoy. One other thing that Jim Butcher puts in this that's really interesting is he does put in sentient cats, a variety of animal-based tribes that have a very big role to play in this series. And if you know Jim Butcher, you know he writes animals pretty well, including cats and dogs and their emotions, and that comes across in this, which you think sentient cats, you're like, okay, whatever. It really is something that grabs you and has a riveting element to the story and a pivotal element to the story. You also have Warriorborn. These are animal hybrid warriors who have superhuman strength and speed and have cat eyes that they can see in the dark, but they also have higher metabolisms, and there's stigma against them as well. And the key to this series is the airship warfare, which I wish there was more of, but we'll talk about that much later. In The Aeronaut's Windlass, you primarily have 3 point of view characters. You have other little characters that pop up here and there, but primarily the main 3. First one I'll talk about is Captain Grimm. I mean, come on. Captain Grimm, that is an amazing name for a aeronaut ship captain in a steampunk fantasy series. But Captain Grimm, he's the captain of the AMS Predator. I mean, come on. Can you get better at naming things? The Predator is a privateer ship that is a merchant/pirate vessel that is taking out other ships from rival spires. This world that the Aeronaut's Windlass takes place in, there has been eons past trauma to the Earth, and there's horrors on the Earth's surface that only a few people will dare to brave to go down to get wood and resources. So people live in these tall, massive, miles-high spires that have levels of humanity and civilization built up and through and around these spires, and the aeronaut ships go back and forth between the spires to be able to trade and exchange goods and stuff. Now, Captain Grimm, his past is alluded to that he was once in the Navy, the Royal Navy, not Royal Navy, the AMS Navy, and that for some reason he is considered a coward, but it's very evident that he's not a coward. So there's some stuff there I won't get into that is revealed a little bit throughout the story that is really interesting. The next character that you follow through the story is a woman named Gwendolyn Lancaster. Her family owns a bunch of the batteries that grow the crystals that power these massive ships and other weapons and things, and so their resource that they provide is vital to their civilization, to their society. And she joins the guard and gets involved in the story that takes place. And the next person that you follow along with is a woman named Bridget Tagwin. And she is a woman whose family owns a meat vattery, so they grow meats that people can eat. And she also joins the guard to be able to serve her time to support the spire. And one interesting thing is she is able to communicate with cats, right? Sentient cats. They have their own language, and she's able to speak and understand it. And the other character that comes in a little bit is one of the main cats. His name is Raoul, which, okay, cats, Raoul, makes sense. And he is a prince of one of the tribes that is ruling at the top of this Spire Albion. Now, where the Aeronaut's Windlass really shines is in political intrigue, in trade discussions of this world and what drives and fuels the economies and the world, and it's very rich and dense, and you just want to learn more about it in an engaging way. You also have interspire, sabotage, subterfuge, and dare I say terrorism that takes place. And that is a very gripping thing that drives the story. You feel like the story is starting to maybe plateau or dip off, and something else happens that ramps it up and ramps it up and ramps it up, whether it's magic or battles or politics or there are a lot of ways in which Jim Butcher is able to highlight and just keep the reader engaged through this story. There is elements of grand action that leaves you wanting more. There is almost at times a few elements that go into like horror survival, almost like A Quiet Place a little bit. And it has that element that I wish that Jim Butcher had almost embraced a little bit more, that I think would be really fascinating. And it just adds, and there are, in the sequels, there are other elements, but it's something I think he could have dipped into even further. And with the magic and the superstitions, the etherealists, the people who connect with the ether, the mystic, tech, steampunk, magical elements of the day, their way of embracing and using the magic system, let's just say that it creates weaknesses, and the way in which etherealists will shore up their weaknesses is very unique and very engaging. I think Jim Butcher did an amazing job with that. Now, some of the cons is he could have trimmed the fat a little bit. It's a little long. He could have trimmed back 50 pages, something like that, that it would have maybe tightened up the story and just made it a little more to the point. But for me, I read the book and it's a page turner that you just keep going. And I think I stayed up until like 3 a.m. reading it one night until I had to go to bed. And then as soon as I got off work the next day, I finished it as fast as I could. That, for me, that is what engaged me. And I know there's books that people get engaged with as well. The other thing is I think he could have added in more airship and less of the in the tower elements. I can't give spoilers away, but he could have focused a little bit more on some of the airship stuff. I think that would have made it more engaging, but what he included was fantastic with the technology and the sailing and the tactics and the world building and the dangers of the atmosphere and the foreign ships. And it's just absolutely incredible. And so the cons in this, many would look at it as even positives because it leaves you wanting more. And that is why I give this book a very solid A, and it is in contention in being in my top 10 favorite fantasy books of all time. And if you've never read Aeronaut's Windlass, check it out. If you have, let me know what you thought of it. If you agree with my little thoughts, if you disagree, I'd love to connect and talk with you about that. Thank you very much. Check out some of the videos that YouTube is recommending for you. God bless. Have an amazing new year, and go read some good stories.